All right, welcome to the Rejuvenated podcast show, and thank you for tuning in this week. I'm your host, Kathy Carr, and today I have an incredibly knowledgeable, passionate and inspiring woman who is considered one of the leaders in the holistic health and wellness space, Cyndi O'Meara. Cyndi is a nutritionist, best-selling author of Changing Habits, Changing Lives, and From Lab to Table. She's a filmmaker of What's with Wheat, international and TEDx speaker. She is the founder of Changing Habits, an organisation dedicated to educating and providing the resources needed to live a life full of vitality through consuming real foods. She is a nutrition guru with over 40 years' experience and also has a background in anthropology and chiropractic. Cyndi disagrees with low-fat, low-calorie diets. As I can say, Cyndi must be doing something right, because she's sitting here in front of me and she is the image of a rejuvenated woman. She maintains a healthy weight. She's glowing. She has a beautiful just aura about her. She's never taken an antibiotic or painkiller in her life. That is just incredible, amazing, and I love that. And I also love that you're a 61-year-old female that is in no pain. Welcome, huge welcome, Cyndi O'Meara.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. We have a mutual friend, and I love your Changing Habits products. I actually have the green blend, the gelatin, which I should have actually said, could you bring some today, because I'm kind of out of that. And all of your products, I absolutely love it. And I absolutely love that you come from a space of ancestral eating, because it's something when I work with clients that I really want to get to the root, like where they're from. So before we kind of go into that, can you tell me a little bit and tell our listener a little bit more about who you are, how you came about of doing the things you're doing, how Changing Habits came about, but a little bit more also on your history, on your family history, because I find that fascinating. I listened into your TEDx talk.
Yeah. 10 minutes I had to say it all.
Which was really, really inspiring, really inspiring.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of information in one, because I have lived 61 years, and then the family before, they had lived a long time. And I guess where I can start it is maybe talk about my mum and my dad. So my mum is the oldest of 11. She was born in 1937. They started spraying arsenic and lead on the corn and wheat fields in the US, because she was from Iowa, USA, the next year, so 38. And I've seen my grandma's diary about my mum, and my mum was a little bit sickly in that time when they started to spray the arsenic and lead. Then my mum's first brother was born, so she had 7 brothers, and her first brother was born, and when they circumcised him, they realised that he had a bleeding disorder, and they figured out he had hemophilia. And because in those days they had lots of kids, with those 7 boys, 6 of them had hemophilia. So they're all given the diagnosis of hemophilia. They're all checked. Usually it's 1 in 6, but we had 1 in the 7 that was okay, but the 6 had the hemophilia. So then in 1945, the DDT was being sprayed. My grandfather was a corn farmer, but he was a corn farmer that disagreed with the new narrative of agriculture. He disagreed with the spraying and the fertilizer and the arsenic and the lead for it was because of a locust plague that they sprayed that. And then, of course, DDT was a pesticide. So he disagreed with it all. And in actual fact, with the hemophilia and his disagreement with new agriculture, he lost his farm, but he maintained a 2-acre block which fed the family. So he was an incredible knowledge of growing food. So you have to realise in Iowa, 6 months is frozen ground, so you can't grow for 6 months. So in the summer, my grandmother and all the girls would do the harvesting, or probably Grandpa did the harvesting, but my grandmother would pickle, preserve, ferment everything, and it all went into the attic. So I remember being there as a 15-year-old, and my grandma would go, will you go down into the attic and will you pick out the pears and the peaches and the nectarine and all of that stuff. So this is, and then, of course, they were all exposed to all these chemicals. And my question is this, is when the arsenic and the lead was sprayed, was there a genetic issue that happened with my grandfather or my grandmother, which then allowed this new genetic disorder to be in our family. There was no hemophilia in our family before my Uncle JJ was born. So that was all happening on one side of the world, and then on the other side of the world was my father, who was born in Kaikoura, New Zealand, in the most pristine place in the world. His father used to get seaweed from the nearby ocean. They lived across from the ocean, and he would fertilise his land with that, and he grew all the food for that family as well. He was a cobbler. And Dad decided to become a pharmacist. This is back in the 50s. So he did 6 years of pharmacy, and he was noticing that older people, because that's all that would come in for drugs. There was very few young people that would come in for drugs. Older people that were coming in for drugs, they'd come in for their first medication in their 70s. And by the end of the year, they'd be on lots of medications. And so he started to question the validity of what was happening with pharmacy. But one man changed his mind completely, and this was a man he saw in the street that used to come in for Pepto-Bismol, which is for an antacid. You know, it's a pink antacid. And he'd come in, and anyway, he met him in the street, and he said, "Why haven't you been in for your Pepto-Bismol?" And he goes, "The quack up the road fixed me." So my dad asked, who's the quack up the road? You know, and the quack up the road was the local chiropractor. Now, chiropractic had not been going for very long. It was a very new health field. So my dad went to see the quack up the road, decided he quite liked what he was learning from this man. His name was Cyril Phelps. And what he ended up doing was he quit pharmacy, started painting, like house painting, with a friend for 10 months to make enough money to fly to America in 1956. Oh. So probably on a plane that went from New Zealand to Fiji to Hawaii to, to California to Iowa. And it was in Iowa where the only place you could study chiropractic was. And he learnt the difference between mechanistic healthcare and vitalistic healthcare. So mechanistic healthcare is you have a heart problem, you go to the cardiologist. You have a gut problem, you go to the gastroenterologist. You have something wrong with your mental state, you go to a psychiatrist. So they segment the body, and they see what the symptom is, they give you a drug, or they do an operation or give you chemotherapy, whatever it is that they're doing. They'll give you, this is mechanism. Mm-hmm. They don't look at the whole body, what's going on in the whole body. They just segment that body. Whereas vitalism said you have an innate intelligence. Give it the right ingredients, take away interference, and you can be the healthiest specimen that you can possibly be. But you must give it the right ingredients. You must take away interference. And, and what are those ingredients? What were those ingredients? For my father in chiropractic, it was taking away nerve interference. Mm-hmm. But if you were to do vitalism as a whole, you're looking at sunshine, sleep, contact with each other, connection, breath, of course, meditation or downtime, food, clean water. All of these things are so important for the innate intelligence of the human body to work at its best. So even when we start to interfere and we're not eating the right things, your body is doing its best to stay into homeostasis. But it can only do that for so long without the right ingredients. Mm-hmm. And that's why we see autoimmune diseases or heart disease or cancer. This is the body trying to stay in some sort of homeostasis, and then it just goes, it can't do it any longer because you're not giving it the ingredients that it needs. So he learned the difference between mechanism and vitalism. So, of course, that's where he met my mum. My sister was born in Iowa. And this is my thoughts about my mum and my sister, is that mum was exposed to DDT and arsenic and lead and whatever chemicals they were starting to spray in the chemical revolution, which started in, the 30s. So mum was exposed to all of that. And when she became pregnant, she couldn't eat for the first 3 months because of morning sickness. Oh, and so all of her fat cells, because DDT is unlike glyphosate, which is water soluble, it's fat soluble. So the body protects itself by putting all of the chemicals into the fat cells. So my mum would have released those fat cells to survive a pregnancy without food. Mm. So she would have released those fat cells, released the toxins, and bathed my sister in probably DDT. I don't know if arsenic and lead. Who knows? I'm surmising this. So my mum and my sister passed away very young from cancer, both of them. My sister from esophageal cancer and my mum from lung cancer. Mum didn't smoke. So she died from lung cancer. My sister was diagnosed, like my sister was always sick. She was little, like I looked like the older sister. So my sister was very little. She had her tonsils out, her adenoids out. She was on antibiotics because, she was not well. This is when emergency medicine was needed to help her. When that's all mum and dad kind of knew at that time because, if you had a sore throat, you had your tonsils out.
Totally, I know. And it kind of still happens today, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That sort of scenario, because I know that you were talking also like with the sprays, because the sprays are still being sprayed today and a number of chemicals. Because I remember you approaching the councils up here, and when I saw that, because I was in Sydney, then I did my own diligence and called up the councils there. And I know in an area in Sydney where I was living, I had a client and that particular area, I don't want to say it because I don't want to freak anyone out, but it is the highest rates of thyroid cancer because of the DDT poisoning back in the 60s and 70s in that area in Sydney. Mm-hmm. So it's still having an effect today because these children are still getting everything out, aren't they?
And because it's fat soluble, it will stay in the human body and be passed on to the next human body. And remember that when Mum was born, she was born with all of her eggs. And then when my sister, we're all born with all the eggs. So any of that exposure is going to be put onto that egg, whereas sperm is made continuously, whereas an egg is in the female from the day she is born. So I always think, when I was pregnant with my Casey, and Casey's had a baby Sage, I had Casey in me, and I had Sage's egg in me as well. That,
I love that. Yeah.
I just love that. It's just so and it's the same, with anything that passes on like that. You don't know what exposures there were. I actually believe that Mum cleaned out on my sister, and I was born 16 months later, and so I thank my sister for taking that, whatever that was, away from Mum, and she being bathed in that, for me to be able to live the best life I could possibly live. Because Lisa could never live the best life that she could live. At 23, she was diagnosed with CREST, which is an acronym for 5 autoimmune disease: calcinosis, Raynaud's phenomena, esophagitis, scleroderma, and telangiectasia. So it was the esophagitis that eventually killed her, because that then caused Barrett's disease, which then caused the tumour. But she had assumed that it was just the esophagitis, which was why she was struggling to consume foods. She would spend weekends just eating because it was hard to get the food down, and she just assumed it was the inflammation of the esophagus. But when she couldn't put water down, she was rushed to hospital, and they found an 8-centimetre tumour. Now, their thing was, let's take the tumour and the esophagus out. We'll leave you a little bit. And so I did a whole bunch of study on it, and I just said to her, look, you have a chance to live to 5 years, but you could die at 14 weeks. It's an array. It depends on many things. So the narrative was, take the tumour out, give chemotherapy, and that was your chances, 14 days to maybe 5 years at the most. And she just said to me, you know what, no extraordinary means. I want to go home. They put a peg in her tummy, and she fed herself through the peg, and she fed herself only nutritious foods. Like, it was incredible. And you know what? For the year after the diagnosis, she died a year and a month after her diagnosis. But for that year, she went skiing. She still adjusted as a chiropractor. She lived her life to the fullest. She lived alone. She didn't depend on anybody to look after her. And I remember her on the Friday, she says to me, I feel amazing. I reckon I've licked this.
Wow.
That's how she felt. I feel like I've licked it. And then on the Saturday, we went to a play in Caloundra. It was called The Secret Garden. And we went to this play, and she fell asleep. And I went, why are you falling asleep? She goes, I don't know. All of a sudden, I just feel like I've been expended. And then the Sunday, she started bleeding, and Monday, she died.
Wow.
So Friday, that was that last kick that they always talk about.
I was going to say,
cancer patients. Yeah.
Well, I think with anyone reaching towards death, they do have that kind of the kind of a new
Euphoria.
lease. Yeah. It's like a second wind. I'm really sorry to hear that. And when your mother had her, that's the kind of the biggest detoxification process of a woman, that we can have a baby, right?
Yeah.
Or we pass, unfortunately, our toxins onto her. So,
but it shouldn't be that way. And let's just talk about this for a minute.
Yes.
So if we look ancestrally, so in the summer we would eat lots of food because there was lots of food around. We would eat fats, we would eat sugars. That combination together and a more calorie would increase the amount of fat that you are going to store. And you would store around the 5+ kilos in that summertime if it was a good summer. So there'd be that 5 kilos. That would then signal the production of leptin. Leptin is only made by fat cells. That leptin would go to the brain. It would say to the brain, hey, we got a bit of storage here. We could have a baby, So that would start that cycle in the summer of you becoming pregnant. And then winter comes, so you've had the summer, you've gotten into the fall, or spring or autumn. You're now in winter, and you're at about your second trimester. That's when that 5 kilos of fat that you had stored would be used to not only help you survive, but the baby survive until the spring came. And then the food would come again, you'd have the baby, the summer would be there, and then that whole cycle would continue again. So you'd gain weight in the summer, lose it in the winter, gain weight in the summer, lose it in the winter because of food. But these days, women, men, we can eat whatever we want 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. We can eat whatever we want. So we do not have that beautiful ebb and flow of a cleanse. Because that's the way I see it, is that a volcano could have spilled. You could have had some heavy metals in the water and drinking that. But the body did this beautiful ebb and flow. So in the summer, when you're gaining that weight again, most of it would be clean weight. It wouldn't be 20-year-old weight that you have on you with all these DDTs and everything else in there. So my thing is very much to eat seasonally, do that beautiful ebb and flow so that when you are ready to have a baby, that you are clean. But my mum wouldn't have known this. Nobody knew this stuff.
No,
Nobody knew it.
My mum didn't either. She died of Alzheimer's, and I think just, again, with all the toxins, the heavy metals, the aluminium, and all the medications for psychosis, because you talk about psychosis a little bit as well, don't you? Like with the lack of nutrition. And when you talk about that ebb and flow with the summer and winter, it sounds very much like nature.
That's what it is.
How animals, I was going to be a little bit sarcastic there, but that's how nature is, that's animals. Animals don't really, you don't see a lot of disease in animals or...
Wild animals.
Not
our pets.
Wild animals. Well, yeah, and again, it depends
bad.
on what they're eating or what they're feeding. So when you say about the foods for summer and going in that ebb and flow, how would you guide a woman? Because our audience is really between 40 and 60, and there are a lot of women having all of these symptoms, many, many symptoms. I'd be curious to find out what that ebb and flow looks like with foods. And I'm sure you haven't had any kind of menopause experience or symptoms that's doom and gloom, because I feel my job at the moment is to change the narrative around that.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that ebb and flow and also, the menopausal symptoms?
Yeah. Well, let me take you back to when I went through menopause.
Yeah, please.
So I was probably getting into it around the 50s. I don't even remember. It just kind of happened, and I don't really remember too much about it. But what did happen between the ages of 50 and 52 is I noticed aches and pains starting. So I would have really bad right hip pain. As if I was sitting down like this for a while, I would get up and it'd be really painful. And I thought, a girlfriend of mine had a hip replacement at 60. Maybe that's where I'm heading. So I'd have these thoughts. I had this low back pain for about 18 months. And my husband's a chiropractor, and it didn't matter what my structure was like. I still had this ache, and it wasn't like really painful, but it was just an ache. So if I'm walking, and I would walk a lot, so if I was walking for more than 2 or 3 kilometres or standing for a long period of time, I'd have to crouch down and put my hands around my knees just to stretch it out. And tightness in my throat, I couldn't grow my hair, I was gaining weight. What else was I going through? They were the main things. And my skin was not as I would have. It was like in the winter in Queensland, there's no humidity and everything would be cracking up. You know, I just hated it. I'd have to be putting moisturisers on and I'd be itchy. I hated to get into a pool because if I'd get out, it'd be really itchy. So these were the things that were happening to me. I was like drying up. That's what I was obviously doing. And then I decided to do the winter of the hunter-gatherer, basically. I thought, you haven't really done that for a while. You know, you juice fasts and you watch what you eat and you do everything, but let's really get into the winter of the hunter-gatherer. So I cut everything out but small amounts of lean meats because they wouldn't have had much fat on them, and anything that was a green winter vegetable I would eat. Anything that was in the winter foods, but not anything that was deep-rooted. It had to be, you know, very shallow. I ate winter fruits and I cut my calories right down. So I had to force the body to use the fat cells in order to get rid of that weight that I was gaining and hopefully figure out what food was causing all my issues, because I figured it was a food. So the first week I started it, the first 3 days I slept the whole 3 days. Like my girls would find me asleep on the desk like this.
Is that because of the reduction in calories or fat?
I don't know what was happening. I have no idea, but it was hilarious. Or I just go like this. I just fall asleep. I fell asleep in a yoga pose. I was with 2 friends and the instructor was saying, and when you're ready.
How many times?
And when you're ready. And I'm in this yoga pose and finally my girlfriend goes, Cyndi, wake up. So that was the first 3 days. I think my body was healing. I don't know what it was doing. By day 7, I'm walking with my girlfriend that I always walk with. And she goes, why are you not stretching out every couple of K? And I went, oh, my back pain's gone.
Wow.
And then I realised I'd been sitting for some time, at my desk, and I didn't get up in pain. That had gone. My tight throat had gone. I'd lost 4.5 kilos in 1 week, 7 days. Now that you cannot lose that in fat weight, by the way. The thing is that the body will only take away from you the fat that it requires in order to survive, which for a female who's eating 500 calories will be about 2,000 calories, which is around 200 grams. So I should only be able to lose 200 grams of fat, but it takes the body a good 2 to 3 to 4 days to convert from the reserve of fat that you've eaten before and the sugars you've eaten to then start to eat the fat that you've laid down. Mm-hmm. So you have a little, and I think that might have been happening. The body was like going, you're not giving me enough food here. I'm going to slow you right down. But then when it kicks in, so that first 4.5 kilos would have been water weight. And then what happened is that I would have started to lose the fat weight. And what was incredible was I had clarity of mind about day 10 that I hadn't had in a long time. I felt like I know this is going to sound weird, but I remember ringing one of my friends. I was in the country and I was down in Victoria in the mountains, which I love. It's just my favourite place. And I rang her up and I just went, I feel like I can see clearly. There's this clarity I've never seen before. I feel like I'm one with the universe. I know this sounds... And she says, are you doing drugs? And I went, no. So it was mind-blowing. That's all I can say. It was mind-blowing. So I continued that for 3 weeks, lost 9 kilos. So I lost the weight that I'd gained over that 2-year period in 3 weeks. And then I started to introduce those foods back into the diet, or what I would normally eat. And I got to about 3 weeks after that finish of the 3 weeks, I was doing amazing, just introducing all the good quality foods back in. And then I was at Woodford, and I had taken my breakfast and my lunch, but I had not had. I thought I'd be home in that time, but Woodford was so good I didn't want to go home. The music was great, the speakers were great. I didn't want to go home, so I thought, right, I'll eat at Gopal's. So the vegetarian type one, which had a lot of grain and breads and things like that. And so I thought, I'll just eat there and I'll just have that because I don't trust the meat anywhere else. So I did that. The next day, I woke up with a sore back, sore hip, foggy brain, and a kilo of weight. So remember, you can't even put that weight on. That's water weight. That is inflammation. And I went, oh, what did I eat? And I figured out it was wheat, grain basically, but wheat. And I did a 2-year research on it, then did the documentary What's with Wheat, which you mentioned. But I want to take it a little bit further. So I had gotten rid of every symptom I'd ever had. But the one symptom that I had at the beginning of every period was a migraine. It would come on. I knew my period was coming because it would come on. I never drank coffee. I never drank coffee. And I was told it's vasoconstriction, this migraine, and you need a vasodilator. And I knew caffeine was a vasodilator. So I would just drink coffee. One day of a month, I would have that cup of coffee, and it was enough to dilate the blood vessels, so I didn't need to. I guess that was my drug, really. If I didn't nip it in the bud in time, that migraine would fully express itself, and I would be in bed. I couldn't handle light. I couldn't handle sound. It was horrible. It was just horrible. So I would, I'd feel it coming on and I'd go find coffee somewhere. So that was the one symptom that never disappeared because I was still having my cycle at this stage. I was probably about 52 by now and I was still having my cycle. And I thought, okay, I think I've got to get rid of more toxic fat cells because I figured it had to be, because you've got to realise your fat cell is an endocrine organ basically. And it produces about 20 hormones, and the master hormone leptin is in that. So I'm thinking it's got to have something to do with that. I didn't know. I just thought it's got to have something to do with that. So 2 years after I did the first one, I decided to push myself from 60 kilos down further, get rid of any fat that may have been sitting there for the last 20 years because that's when the migraine started, that may have toxicity in it. So I did the same protocol again for 2 weeks, 500 calories, just doing the hunter-gatherer winter foods. Didn't lose any weight, no inflammation, no nothing, didn't lose anything. And I'm thinking, how can that be? I wasn't hungry, I was happy, everything was fine. How can I not be losing weight? How am I surviving? And then the 3rd week happened and I got a massive migraine. And in one day, I mobilised nearly 3 kilos of weight. And I just think the body said, I can't hold on to this toxicity any longer. I cannot hold on to this fat any longer. I got to release it because she's not going to survive if I don't release it. So I had 5 days of migraines where 2 days were in bed, but the next 3 days I could handle it.
Because they're not fun at
no, not nice at all. So I had 2 days really sick and then 3 days nothing. Now, this wasn't my cycle. This was not in my cycle. This just happened during the clean out. Do you know I've never had a headache or a migraine since that day?
Wow.
Not one.
You did it.
I did it.
You released the toxicity.
I released the toxicity that was causing that issue in my hormones. And so from then on, I cruised through menopause. I didn't have any problems. If I had a hot flash, because they would talk about these hot flashes, if I ever had one, it would be very minor and it would last for a second or 2 seconds and I go, oof, that feels a bit hot. And then I'd be over it and I'd be onto it.
Right. And what do you think is that like a quick stress response, do you think, the reason why, or it's just, again, the body's just filtering or trying to do the thing with the toxins moving around? Because, you've had a little bit. I have every now and then. When I feel that I have a hot flush, it's usually if I'm having a stressful thought or stressful situation that the body's just trying, or it's kind of into that sympathetic response. But I know there's women that suffer a lot. Can you talk a little bit about the foods, the best foods, because, food is our medicine. When you talk about 500 calories, that's not much really, is it? Mm-mm. Would it not deplete your blood sugars and the effect to think, like when you were kind of crashing, or you just had to go through that
It was just 3 days. And my thought is, yes, I was probably crashing everything and my fat wasn't being mobilised in my body to feed me. So what happens in the winter of the hunter-gatherer is the fat that you put on in the summer feeds you in the winter at 200 calories a day. So the longest fast ever that has ever been recorded was 13 months. So he was, I wish I knew the exact figures. I've written about him. He was 200 and something, let's say 250 kilos or whatever. He was pretty big. And he decided to do a fast. He just decided, I'm not living like this anymore. He was in his 30s. I'm not going to live like this anymore. You can look it up online. You can read the science behind it. And so he was monitored by a group of scientists. And he lost 330 grams a day consistently. Like he might have lost a lot in the beginning and then it slowed down, but if they did it over that 13 months, he lost 330 grams a day on a water fast.
Oh, wow.
So that's 330 calories, 3,300 calories approximately, like give or take whatever it is, that he was living on every day. And you've got to remember that fat cells have got all of those beautiful fat-soluble vitamins in them. They've got hormones. It's stored there for your survival if you've got no food. So he probably had toxins in there as well. But what they did do is that they did give him electrolytes. So they monitored his blood and they did give him electrolytes, but he mainly drank water and tea. That was what he did for 13 months. And he got down to 90-something kilos. If you work it out, you can work out the 13 months multiplied by 330 grams. You'll know exactly what he lost. And I think, he probably it would have been hard for him in the beginning. But as his body realised that this is his fat storage, this is what you're going to be living on, this is what I can give you. And then he was monitored by the doctors and the researchers to give him the electrolytes that he needed. And no doubt there was some vitamins, some water-based vitamins. I don't know. I don't know exactly how he did it. I don't know how his microbiome survived. I don't have any answers to that, but I find it fascinating. He did it.
It'd be interesting if a woman could do the same. Do you think? It's a human body, but we're just made so differently. It'd be interesting if a woman would be able to do the same.
Yeah. I don't know because it wasn't a woman. It was a man that did it, you know. Yeah. And I don't know, one woman wants to try and do that, that is who wants to, we could do an experiment, but that'd be up to her, to figure it out. But if you live by the rules of anthropological principles, and so when I was 19, I wanted to go skiing. That's all I wanted to do was ski. But
another thing we have in common, I wanted to ski the world.
Ski the world and have a good time.
Yeah, totally. That's what it's about.
Well, and I couldn't go to university and ski at the same time. So I found a place in the world that I could go to uni and be 20 minutes from the ski resort, and that was Boulder, Colorado. So in 1980, I moved to Boulder, Colorado and started at the University of Colorado and did pre-med because I knew I wanted to do health or sciences or whatever it was. I don't know what I wanted to do, but in America they do what they call pre-med for 4 years. And then from there you go off and do medicine if that's what you want to do, or research or whatever it is that you want to go and do, chiropractic, that's what you go and do. So I went and did pre-med and we were allowed electives. And I did the study of stars. I was absolutely loved nebulas and constellations and the history of the Big Bang Theory. I love that. So I did that. But I also did anthropology and cultural anthropology. And I had the most incredible lecturer, Professor Van Gerven, and I just got so much out of him and learnt so much about what we did to survive, and it was food. Mm-hmm. Food was our survival. I didn't back then think about, we're outside, so we had sunshine, we had clean water, I didn't know about breath work then. I didn't realise the ancient art of breath work. I knew none of that stuff. I just realised that food was our survival and tools. So I rang my mum, I'll never forget, I rang my mum and I said, I want to be a dietitian. I can't afford to do it in America. I haven't got enough money because there was nothing, I had to pay to go to America. And by the way, back then it was $5,000 a year. So it was cheap if you think about it, but I wanted to go to free school, which was back home in Australia. So I said, I want to become a dietitian. I want to do food. So I went to the University of Colorado in Boulder. From the University of Colorado in Boulder, I went to Deakin University in Warm Ponds, Geelong, and finished my Bachelor of Science majoring in nutrition. And then at the end of it thought, oh, this is BS. This has nothing to do with anthropological principles. I was learning margarine was better than butter. So there was nothing about hunter-gatherers and herders and agricultural life. There was nothing about that. It was just low fat because it was the beginning of the dietary guidelines. 1980 was the beginning of the dietary guidelines. Low fat, all these ultra-processed foods were coming in. The body, you can't get it from food. You've got to supplement. Breakfast cereals, modified milks, pasteurization, homogenization, So I'm thinking, I can't teach this. So I finished my Bachelor of Science majoring in nutrition, did not go and do my Diploma of Dietetics, went back to university to do chiropractic, did 2 years of chiropractic, which was human anatomy, pathology, histology, embryology, parasitology, embryology you can think of. And at the end of that 6-year stint at university, I went, I know exactly what the body needs. It needs what I learnt first year university at the University of Colorado. And so I started, just practicing as a nutritionist in Melbourne and seeing phenomenal results, absolutely phenomenal results, with people who were older than me. I remember this one man came to me in his 70s and I'm 24, 24-year-old trying to tell a 70-year-old what to do. He's a farmer from Shepparton. His name is Mr. Rutherford, and he sits like this the whole time. Arms crossed, legs crossed, looking down at me while I tell him the principles of natural eating. And he leaves, doesn't say a word, just leaves. About a week later, he calls me. And he says, Miss Lovett, because that was my maiden name, Miss Lovett, I need to come and see you again. I went, oh, all right, Mr. Rutherford. I'm thinking, he's going to tell me off, And he comes and he sits down. He says, I have a story to tell you. He said, I'm a pear farmer. I have the best pear farm. I have the best pears in the district of Shepparton. He said, 5 years ago, all this chemical farming, it was doing the worst thing to my pears. They tasted bad. I'd lose crops. I was spending money on chemicals. I was doing all of this, And he said, 5 years ago, I decided to go back to my old ways, back to old farming. So this is a man in his 70s. He's now 75, 5 years he's been doing this. And he said, what a fool I've been. I should have done it to myself too.
Yeah.
So he followed everything I said. He came in with a numb leg. His daughter had sent him to me because she'd been to me, and all of that got fixed. All of it. I don't know what fixed that numb leg. I have no idea. I just gave him the ingredients that he needed in order to be the best he could be. So I don't know why I started down that track. You asked me a question, and then I went into anthropology. So everything for me goes back to, well, what would it have been like? And vitalism. So in the Nutrition Academy, which is my education arm of changing habits, where I have a 12-month course, that's the first two things they learn. They learn anthropological principles and the principles of vitalism. That's their first two modules, and they're all assessed. It's all assessment-based. So it teaches them a new way of thinking. So I had a question from one of my students, and this will give your audience an understanding of why I always go back to those principles, and it's about liposomal supplements. She said, I keep seeing nutritionists and naturopaths doing liposomal supplements, and I thought it was just a gimmick. I didn't really look into them. So I said, all right, well, I'll have a look into them. And so I go to patents. It's the first thing I do is I go to patents. I want to see how they're making the liposomal, it's like a ball. I don't know if anybody knows what liposomal means, but it's a ball, and it's a phospholipid, a fat ball, and in the middle it's empty. And so they can put vitamin C, they can put medications, they can put gene therapy, they can put vaccines into it. They can put anything they want into this ball, and it will be delivered to the body. And I thought, well, let's see how it's made. So in 1960, and then I look at the history. Remember, I always go to the history of how did it start. So it started in 1965. It was a simple phospholipid. They'd put medication into it, and it would be delivered to away from the stomach and into the cells. That's what the idea was. But of course, technology has changed it. It now has a PEG in it, a propylene glycol in it, with ethylene oxide in it. It's disgusting what they've done to it.
Wow. Absolutely disgusting.
So at the end, I wrote an article on it because I was just blown away by it, and I'm only just doing it briefly now. But what I say at the end of the article, I have too many questions around this. We have created this technology and the body is figuring out how to break it down every time. So it's called pegylated liposomes, which has got the PEG in it. Do you know the human body is now, because there's so many PEGs in our life, the human body is now figuring out how to break it down with an immunological response. So it's called an anti-PEG antibody, as well as immunoglobulins will attack this, open up that liposome and deliver the drug, the toxin, the gene therapy into the body in the wrong place. Or the vitamin or the nutrient. I know you can't put them on the same, but I struggle with this technology. If it's an emergency, by all means, I think liposomal is good. If you have chronic disease, then liposomal therapy is fine, but not on a daily basis. So these are the things. But I always go back to history. And was that in our foods? Was liposomals in our food? Yes, they were, but not with PEGs and ligands and all the other things they're putting onto this phospholipid layer. So I look at food then and I go, what's the nutrient that they're throwing in there? Should that be in our cell structure? Like they're trying to do it. So always anthropological principles come into everything that I think about, because it gives me this guiding light as to what's right and what's wrong. And vitalism, the philosophy of vitalism, gives that to me too. Because you can look at science and go, wow, that's cool. And the delivery of a vitamin into the cell, that would be cool. But how's it delivered? And what are they using? What's the technology? What's it doing to the body holistically, as opposed to, oh, well, we can deliver that gene, drug, vaccine. And by the way, this new vaccine is liposomal technology. They're using liposomal technology to get the mRNA into the cell. That's how they do it.
Okay.
With the PEG, with the ligands.
It's clever. So we're being deceived on so many different levels, so it's no wonder so many people are confused.
Yeah.
And thanks to you for doing so much research and study, because there wouldn't be many people that would do that when they look at a food or a symptom or where it comes from. So, and because the soil has been so denatured now, we can look at holistic principles and, look to the earth to provide us for the fuel that we need. But the soil is so depleted, right? So you talk about regenerative farming, organic, do you biodynamic?
Syntropic, natural sequence.
So would love to know a little bit more about that, because we're talking about the food and the liposomal, just all of those things going into that. How do we get away from that?
So what is, big question. So what has happened is that we've been told that our food isn't good enough to deliver the nutrients that we need in order to be a vitalistic, healthy, incredible human being. So that's the narrative that we're being given. And if you're eating ultra-processed foods and you're eating foods from farms that they use glyphosate and they use Paraquat and they use all of those other things that are out there for pesticides, herbicides and fertilizers and NPK, if you're eating food from those, I'd probably agree. You're going to need some sort of supplementation, but the supplementation I love to see is food-based supplements. But then why buy your food from these crappy farmers and then buy these beautiful supplements that are food-based supplements that all they are is food, like greens and, the right foods. Like if you're buying Sheridan's product with the liver and the beautiful berries, why not just go eating liver and berries,
Yes.
That's the supplement I want. Are you eating my supplements, which is Peak Performance, which is all food-based? There's no supplement, there's no synthetic supplement in there whatsoever. It's all food-based, as well as my colloidal minerals. Or you're you're buying my daughter's, that Healthy Co, you know, hers is all berries and collagen, you know, all from really good sources. So if you're buying that, why aren't you eating good food? You're spending money on these supplements. Why aren't you just saying, well, these guys are all doing it from great farmers. I'll eat my ultra-processed foods and then I'll go eat this. It just doesn't make sense.
And are they going to absorb that, really, if they're still having those processed foods? So there's going to be a little bit of a war. I mean, the body always wants to move towards homeostasis. But, you know, if they're not eating that real food from supplements, it becomes expensive kind of urine. Doesn't
very,
it? You just
very much.
Piss it out of you.
Yeah.
You don't absorb.
Well, you don't, but at least they're food-based, so you're going to have a lot better. With the food-based ones, you've got all the carbohydrates, proteins and fats that are binding those vitamins, as well as other vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and antioxidants and plant-based chemicals that are in there that are also helping you absorb that nutrient that you need. And this is the thing that we've done with, I believe, there's three types of healthcare. There's allopathic. You go to your doctor to get something, to take something away. That's what you do. You have no responsibility whatsoever. And then there's alternative. You go to your naturopath, your nutritionist, or whatever is out there to take something, to take something away if they're not changing lifestyle. And then there's something called alternate, innate. The alternative to these two is innate. So you take full responsibility. You change your lifestyle. You do your diet. You don't take supplements in the beginning. You see if the lifestyle works. And then Natasha Campbell-McBride, who's one of my favourite doctors who started GAPS, you know, she says if in 3 months you change the lifestyle, you change the diet, and you are no better, then we look further. We do testing, we look at supplements, we look at ways that we can do this in emergency care. As long as it's not an emergency. By the way, if I hurt myself, I'm going straight to emergency. If I have a cut that's bleeding so bad, I'm not going to ask nutrition, I'm not going to ask anything. You just fix that cut up, you know, and you just stitch it up. That to me is incredible what they do, you know. So don't get me wrong, I love emergency medicine. It's just that they've taken over everything. And that's never been their forte. Their forte is emergency medicine. And, you know, if a baby is born and something's wrong, they're there, you know. That's their forte. Their forte has never been prevention. And it's never been about health. It's about getting rid of symptoms. It's mechanism. And both are required. Vitalism and mechanism are both required. But we can't take over here and they can't take over this. So it's got to be on a you know, like on a ruler, I guess. One is, there are two extremes and we can meet in the middle and we can go over this side or we can go over this side in order to help, you know, the human body and the human. So with taking supplements, they're synthetic. Vitamin C is made from GMO corn that then's put into a fermenting vat. So it's made into glucose that's then put into a fermenting vat. Now, is that bacteria genetically modified now? So what they're doing is that it's called synthetic biology. So what they're doing is that they've figured out fermentation using bacteria and genetically modifying them to make our supplements, our food additives, our medicines, our vaccines are all done by bugs, genetically modified bugs. And I write about it in my book, Lab to Table, about synthetic biology. So here's a vitamin C that you're taking because you're lacking in food, or the right foods, but it's from GMO crops that have been sprayed with glyphosate. You're destroying the soil, so you're not part of the solution. You're part of the problem. So this is when you start to want to make an impact, not only on your own lives, but the life of the planet, the life of your children, your grandchildren. And there's these beautiful stages. And when you have the understanding and the realization of the food that you choose impacts the rest of the planet and the rest of the population, and that you have all the power in the world in doing this because you are spending your dollar with farmers that are doing the right thing as opposed to the farmers that aren't, you're not needing those supplements because you're supporting the people that are producing maybe a supplement that will be perfect for you in whatever stage of life you're in, such as like I talked about me, I talked about Sharon and my daughter Tanya. I could talk about a heap. There's heaps out there. You know, Kirsty Worth, they're all doing it with food, with food. So I just feel when we get to our age, and I don't know where you are in the age group, but
I'm 55.
55. So when we get to here, we do want to make a difference. And a lot of us feel, how can I make a difference? What can I do? This is how you make your difference, is where you spend your money, because the less money you spend over there, like over with the chemical farmers and the supplement companies and all of that, and the more money you're spending over here and supporting the people that are thinking about the planet, then you're making an impact. You know, that's the only way that's the only way I do it, you know. Like I open my mouth but I can't change anybody.
You open it well, though. You've got lots of amazing information when it comes out. So keep opening that mouth. It's the choice. It's definitely a choice. And when you're talking about, you know, those two ends of the scale, it's a real this for that approach. And I think, you know, with women that are feeling these symptoms, we just want to get out of pain. Like, you know, when you're experiencing that back pain or the hip, you're moving around just to get out of it. And I think we reach for that quick fix. But if it just comes from, instead of a plant, like a chemical plant, make it come from a plant that's in the soil with beautiful soil. Yeah.
Look, I agree. And if you are experiencing the symptoms, you can get rid of them, but you're going to have to get rid of fat. And what happens is I notice the 50s, and when they're going through menopause, everybody expands. And this is when you have to really think about what you're eating and how, you know, because it is a time when I see if you're eating too many carbs for our age group, we don't need the carbs anymore. We needed them as young women. We needed them when we were having babies. We needed them when we were breastfeeding. We needed them until our babies get old enough and we start going into where we don't need the carbs anymore. And I look at a tribe, I kind of look at it this way, and I think people who would have, if there wasn't enough fruit around, probably we wouldn't have taken it because we didn't need it. So I kind of look at it that way. I look at it, no, we need the young people to have it. They're breastfeeding, they're doing that. Let's give them the fruit. And then we might be living on a very ketogenic diet, you know, more so. I still love my carbs, don't get me wrong.
When you say carbs, just because people will automatically think with carbs, so, you know, share what carbs are in Cyndi's and Kathy's world.
Okay. So so there's proteins, which are your meats and, you know, your amino acids. There's fats, which we all know what a fat is, butters and lards, but not your over here. If people are watching this, over on my left side is your agriculture, where they're producing canola and soya and all the vegetable oils and the grapeseed and all that. That is just crap fat. So over here on my right side, which is my good side, we're producing butter, like organic butters or regenerative farm butters or multi-species cropping, butter, ghee, lard, tallow, avocado oil that's cold pressed or olive oil that's cold pressed. Those ones, even though I'm a little bit still funny with those, I'd much rather my animal fats, but I'll also take those because I put it on my skin, you know, like, so I am absorbing it. So they're your proteins and your fats. So there's only 3 macronutrients. The third macronutrient, which is not essential, the body can survive without it, but it would like it. It does like it because it makes life easier for us, is all those plant-based foods. So not so much our nuts and seeds, but and avocados, but more like mangoes and bananas and oranges, and all of those things are our carbohydrates, as well as grains, as well as legumes. So, and breads and crackers and cookies and all of that. But when I think of carbs, I think of summer, mangoes, peaches, nectarines, cherries, and I love them. I absolutely love them, and I have banana trees and I have nectarine trees, and I do have those fruits when they're around, and acerola cherries, and
oh, yum!
I know, they're just all. I just go to the tree and just eat.
And I think that's really vital in this day and age right now. We need to start thinking about growing our own and having real food. You know, we are fortunate. I find that up here in the Sunshine Coast, it's plenty of amazing resources and clean resources, farmers markets, farmers that aren't using sprays, or doing their best, or they have organic but they can't certify them. So I think, being able to grow your food is essential. You're on a farm. We've got a small acreage, and I'm starting to, I've got a few cucumbers and herbs and things, but I'm going to do a massive veggie garden. We're still in the process of that. I won't eat my goats though. I couldn't even imagine doing that.
But you can drink their milk.
I can drink their milk. I will put them to a male and put them to a buck, and then have some cheese and some milk. Tell me about your farm. You have a regenerative farming. Mm-hmm. What's different to that compared to organic? I don't think we need to go into conventional, because conventional farming for our audience is just what Cyndi's described. Of all of those sprays, it's depleting the soil. There is no humus or nutrients in the soil. But in a regenerative farm or organic or biodynamic farming, there's a whole new, beautiful, the humus, the actual organisms in the soil that are creating this vitality in the foods that we eat. Can you share with us a little bit about your farm?
Yeah.
I'd love to come up and have a little.
Yeah, you can. You can definitely come on up. So I bought it 7 years ago, and I watched Jurassic Park grow. Just went nuts. It was in the summer, and I went away for a month and came home, and I thought, whoa, what have I done with 60 acres? What am I going to do with this? It was crazy. The growth that happens on the Sunshine Coast in the summer is incredible.
I'm stressing out about 2, and you've got 60. I can't imagine the grass.
Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. So I in the beginning, after that year of just letting it sit, because I didn't know what they'd sprayed on it. I now know, because I know the owners and I have been told what they sprayed on it. I did watch Jurassic Park grow, and I just thought, I've got to sell this. I can't do this. And then I met this beautiful lady by the name of Mirag Gamble. She's at Crystal Waters, just down the gully from me, basically, the valley from me. And she just said, Cyndi, these are not weeds. These are primaries. It's telling you your land is sick and that you need to heal it. And what I suggest is, you've got 3 options. You can cut it up and put small-time farmers in there and let them deal with it. You can do something else. I can't remember what the second one, but the third one is get a consultant in that knows how to heal the land. So I ended up hiring a consultant for 2 years, and he taught us regenerative farming. So it's based on wild animals being bunched up, and we put them in an electric fence, and they're bunched up, and they poo and they wee and they eat, and then you move them very fast. And then the chickens come in behind them a couple of days later, and they pick out all the parasites. They spread the poo. They're like the tractor. They're like, without being a tractor, you have your tractors in the chickens. So over the years, what ends up happening is, from land that was sick, and being sick means has no mycelium, or very little, no worms. It's lost all its ecology, so all the microbes that are in the soil that hold the soil together to help the grass grow and whatever grows won't hold water. So all your water runs off. It's hard, dry land. So that's where we started. By doing the cattle and the chickens for quite a few years, we were able to increase our organic matter, which increased the ecology of the soil, because we weren't spraying glyphosate or Roundup on it or anything on it. We were able to increase the ecology of the soil. The water holding capacity of our land is incredible. So in the first 2 years, you're like going, geez, I'm spending a lot of money doing this and a lot of time doing this. Just seriously, is it really worth it? Can't we just, I don't know what I was thinking. And one winter we had a really dry winter, and we have a barbed wire fence between our neighbours and us. They have cattle. They don't have chickens, but they have cattle. And I looked down that barbed wire fence. I had green grass this high. It was incredible. It was lush. It was mind-blowing. And they had brown, dry dirt. It was, sorry that I clapped that. Dry, I could hear it in my microphone. They had dry bone dirt. And I took a photo of it, and I went, now I know what I'm doing. Because I'm a nutritionist. I'm not a farmer. I have no idea. And that was the first few years. And then I learned enough from this beautiful consultant, and I let my son then take over from like looking after the farm. So he loves the cattle, he loves the chickens. We planted fruit trees, and then I met this beautiful man named Rob. Just at a talk, we were sitting next to each other. He knew who I was, but I didn't know that he knew that. He didn't catch on, and he kind of turned to me and I said, "So Rob, what do you do?" You know, and he goes, "Oh, I'm a syntropic farmer." And I went, "What's that?" And this was quite a few years ago, and he told me, and I went, "Would you come up to my land, and I don't mind paying you, but just tell me what I can do with my farm." He hasn't left me. He's just the most amazing syntropic farmer, and he only has to come up 1 or 2 times a week now, just to keep this incredible syntropic farming going. So while my son is the expert on the animals and he wants to learn about the animals, he's the expert on the plants, and my son wants to learn about the plants. And my husband is a maintenance boy. He's just there to help everybody. He really makes the place look good. So what we've done is that we've taken very sick land and in 7 years converted it into something that pulses. You can watch things grow. Like my banana trees, we've just done a complete mulching, and we've cut everything down that's there for us to mulch. So arrowroot, bananas, comfrey, all of that's growing, and then we just cut it all back and we mulch. And you watch, in 6 months it'll be back again. It'll be incredible. It's like you watch it grow. Like I'll be up there one Saturday and I'll go back the next Saturday and I went, it's grown this much. So I have lots of fruit trees, lots of vegetables. We just grew a heap of garlic that's drying in the shed at the moment. I've got a heap of ginger that we've grown, and it's just, I feel like it's taken me 7 years though. It's taken me 7 years of what I call mistakes, what Charlie Arnott says to me, they're not mistakes, Cyndi. You learnt about your land. You know what works and what doesn't work. And I do. I know exactly what works now. So we do a combination. We do regen farming, which is the cell grazing, what I call cell grazing. We do syntropic grows, which is fruit trees, vegetable gardens, garlic, ginger, all grows amongst each other. So we don't have a patch of ginger over there. Well, we do actually at the moment, in amongst the syntropic grows. It's in the syntropic grows. But we just have figured this out. My son wants to do more with natural sequence farming, which is holding more water on your land with swales. We do have some swales, but he's now really learnt how to do it. And the last thing we do is multi-species pastures. So instead of our cows having one species to eat, they have a choice of many species to eat. And they are incredible at knowing when they need comfrey or when they need a certain food. They know. And so we have tick country, we have fly country, we have 3-day illness, we have all of these things that are in where we are because it's so wet. And we are managing the best we can. Sometimes we do have to treat, and it's usually neem with the ticks. And then with the flies, we had one girl go down with the flies and we had to put a tag in her. But this to me is mechanism. This is, we're going to lose her unless we do something. So this is when the drugs come in. Yeah. And when we will use them, and and it's so funny because my husband said we need to become organically certified. And I went, well, I'm not sure we can become organically certified when we treat one cow like that. I'm not sure. I've never gone through it. But I do know this. I know the quality of my foods. I know the quality of everything that's on my ground. I know we've been working on this for 7 years. I know we hold water because and soil. We hold water and soil. So not only have I increased the ecology in my soil, the amount of growth that happens, which is the organic matter, the amount of mulching that happens, the amount of soil that stays on my land. There's no erosion on my land because when there's a big rain event, my water runs clean. There's no mud, there's no dirt, there's nothing in it. And when anywhere you want to dig on my ground, you dig it up, there's worms everywhere.
Wow, yeah. My husband is going to love this conversation because I'm thinking, okay, what areas of my property is dry and what's holding more moisture? It's kind of boggy. Oh,
well, you can organise it so it will do it itself just by using plants and swales and, yep.
Yeah, I love that the cows go to what they desire, or they just have that innate knowing, and I think every animal really does, because I think my mentor Paul Check says, a lion would never go to, a berry bush or something, and a giraffe doesn't go and kill, another, an animal. They just don't, and that's kind of an example of what we've come to be eating. We've just come so far away from nature and what is provided, or what can be provided for us on our own land. And if you don't have a huge amount of land, you can have a little bit of a veggie garden anyway. I love that,
you don't need a lot of land.
Or even vertical, can't you?
Yep.
Yep.
You just got to make sure you've got all your nutrients and your soil right. We do the Incredible Edible Garden in the Nutrition Academy, and it's about getting your soil right. You're a soil farmer. That's all you are. You're not a cattle farmer. You're not a syntropic farmer. You're not this. You're a soil farmer. And when your soil is, if you're more, interested in the soil, then everything will look after itself. And you think about the human body. If you're interested in this soil, which is mouth to anus, which is exactly what is feeding you, if that is working right, the rest of the body will work right. You talked about, well, what about, can they absorb those nutrients? Well, when you get your soil right in your land and in here, and they are, they're helping each other all the time. If your soil's not right here, your soil's not going to be right here. So I see the synchronicities of what I learned in nutrition to what I'm learning in farming, and I still have a lot to learn. Like, I've done biodynamic courses with Charlie Arnott and Hamish McKay. We've done natural sequence farming with Stuart Anderson, and his father Peter was on the Australia Story. If anybody wants to watch what he did to save his land with natural sequence farming. We've done Regenerative with Alan Savory. So we learnt from Alan Savory, who's the father of that cell grazing. Who else have we learnt from? RCS. There's just, we go to farming expos, we go to farming matters down in Albury Wodonga. We have a farming group here on the Sunshine Coast. So we're called the Organic Farm, or the Organic Growers. I think we're the Organic Growers. And even though we're not all organically certified, we all have a passion for the soil, and we all go to each other's places every month. We spend an afternoon or a morning with someone and learn something else. It's just incredible.
I get excited.
I had them come to my place, and I'm walking with this older gentleman. I can't remember his name, but because there's so many of them. It's just, they are so intelligent. And I'm walking with him, and I go, oh, look at my cobbler's peg, we won't spray, and I don't know what. He said, that cobbler's peg, you know what it's doing? It's got a yellow flower. It's bringing sulphur up. You need sulphur, so it's just bringing your sulphur up. It'll go when the sulphur's up. I said, well, what about the thistle? That's sharp, that's silica. And then there was a purple one, I think it's purple top, which is medicinal, but it's still classified as a weed. And he goes, purple, that's bringing your copper up, and your red's bringing your iron up. And I just, all of a sudden I went, okay, I don't have a problem with them anymore.
And we pull them out.
And
they keep coming back.
And there's a reason they keep coming back. And it's funny.
They're trying to do their job.
They've just got to do their job, and then everything else grows. And I've watched this for the last 2 years. We've had the cobbler's peg. But what I'm seeing is, as the soil is improving, the cobbler's peg only goes to where there's a bit of rockery or bare land. It goes there to do what it needs to do, and then it disappears, even though it's got thousands of little seeds.
I might do that offline, because I could ask you so many questions and go down the farming now, because that's inspiring to me, because you feed your family, right? I think I read that your farm now provides enough food for you to feed 6 families. Was that right? Or 6 people in a family?
Well, no, we don't completely feed our family. Number one,
not yet,
is I can't kill my cows.
Right. I understand.
You can't kill your goats. I can't kill my cows. So the farmer across the way, I don't know his cows. He's got Angus.
They don't have any name, or no names that you know.
No names that I know. Stuart Andrews. He gives me the chickens, the lambs. So I go to other farm. Look, I know this sounds really ridiculous, but I love my girls. So I go to other farmers that I trust to
yeah.
give me that. As far as plants go, I can feed a lot of people with plants. But as far as and eggs I can feed everybody with eggs. I don't have any problem with taking those eggs from those girls. They have a good life. So I take the eggs from the girls. I don't have any dairy, so, I've said to Brogan, do you think you could just milk Alice? Alice is one of the girls. He goes, I'm not going anywhere near her. You can try. She'd kick out at us. But so then I'll buy dairy from somebody else. So you should see my sunflowers. I probably have 1,000 sunflowers sitting in my garden at the moment. So I could sell that to a florist that I could get cash for that and then go and buy somewhere else. I do give food to Grub, and so then I do a barter system with them. So I may have way too many limes for my family, so I'll do a barter system with them. So to say that I can feed my whole family right now, I can't. I could, but I probably have to be pushed into that situation before I would do that, and that may come.
Yeah, so my point was, you're kind of getting to that stage where you will be able to, feed your grandbabies, and to have an awesome community. I have a farmer down the road that I can go and pick up beef, biodynamic beef. And I think if you just do the research and resources, and you do have these resources, and there is an amazing community, wherever you are, I think you just have to reach out and ask people. So if you've got you do the bartering system, I think you're helping not only you, as you said, it filters out to the collective. You're all sharing and making this place a better place.
Yeah. And I think the Sunshine Coast has a really good connection with the farmers, like our markets. And I'm sorry for people listening who may not have these great markets, but I've been here 32 years, and to see the passion of, in the last decade, these young men and women farmers, I want to support them. I want to be part of, I do buy from them. What I don't grow, I buy from them. And then I give them what I grow too much of. So I had lettuces coming out my ears before the rains came. So I gave them to a couple of stores, and I had broccoli, more broccoli than you'll ever done. Cabbages, I made a heap of sauerkraut. So I do have too much harvest sometimes, and you have to, my family going, I don't want another cabbage, Mum. Okay. We don't need any more garlic, Mum.
But I think just so inspiring, so inspiring. If it was the other way, they'd be complaining, though.
Probably.
If there wasn't anything available, so inspiring. I could talk to you for so long. I know that you've probably got a busy day ahead of you. For our listener, what, in your opinion, is a rejuvenated woman? Cyndi, I'm sitting in front of a rejuvenated woman because I just love everything that you bring and everything that you're about, and thank you so much for doing your part. Thank you. What is a rejuvenated woman to you?
I feel like I went into my 60s far better than I went into my 50s. And I have to say that it was about figuring out what was right for me as I moved on to my next phase of life. I love educating myself, so food was a really big part of that. I also started breath work, so I really, really got into that because with the beginning of 2020 and the pandemic starting, I started to get anxiety. Now, I shouldn't have had a gut that gives me anxiety, so because I got a pretty healthy microbiome in there, I feed it well. So my soil was okay, but there was an outer stress that I had to either cope with or get rid of, and I learnt how to cope with it. So I started doing that breath work. It's about doing routines. It's about having habits. You cannot get up in the morning, go on your social media, get up and not get outside and be part of life. You can't listen to news. You've got to turn the radio off, stop reading the newspaper, stop watching television and whatever it is. As a rejuvenated woman, to me, if you don't watch that, you don't know what's happening in the world. You just see these people with masks and you go, what? do we have to wear masks again? Are you serious? You know, I have no idea what is happening. I don't know that there's a new variety out there, or until someone makes a comment to me, because I'm not watching or listening to any mainstream media. So to me, that's hard for people because they're addicted to that. So turn that off, do your breath work, learn meditation. Like I've started TM. I don't do it every day, transcendental meditation. And I learnt from, because I should know his name, Tom Cronin. Tom would be so upset with me if I didn't. All of a sudden I went, had a blank. Yeah.
Like him.
So learn from Tom Cronin. He's an Australian. He's doing a great job. Joe Dispenza's brilliant. I've done all of his workshops. Just like have an excitement about life, you know, just see life as this incredible thing that it doesn't happen to you, you create. Because a lot of people think it's happening to me. No, I'm creating it. Have grandbabies.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, they're just the best.
That lights you up.
Oh,
Look at you light up.
I could cry over my grandbabies. I got 2 and I've spent the whole weekend with them, and it's just, I don't know what it is about them.
You're going to make me cry now because I can't wait. I'm going to be waiting for a little bit more though, I think.
I just play with them.
Yeah.
I don't have to feed them. I don't have to do anything. I just sit them here with me. I sing songs to them. We go, I took one of them, the little Sage. She's older than my little Koa, who's just a little boy. He's 16 weeks and Sage is nearly 9 months. So I took her to the beach, much to the disgust of her mother when I got her brought her home.
Not burnt.
No. Sandy.
Oh.
In every crevice.
I was going to say every orifice, yes.
Yes, she was Sandy. Anyway, I sat her down with me and I picked up some pumice and I picked up some cuttlefish and some seaweed and some shells, and I just discussed them with her. That's all I did. And then she wanted to touch it, and then there was sand here, there. You go, darling. She's home.
Thanks, Mum.
Thanks, Mum. And she comes out of the shower, and I went, did you get it all out? She goes, barely, Mum. And then I wanted to take her yesterday. It was the day before the Saturday, and I wanted to take her yesterday to the beach. She goes, no, Mum, you're not taking her to the beach.
That's funny.
This is grand.
So Liv, meet your life, greet life with excitement, because this time of our lives isn't a time that we need to dread. I'm always talking about being a wise woman. We step into these wise women years, and because we have so much to impart. So I love that. Step into this part of our lives with excitement.
Yep,
yes.
Definitely. But you have to look after yourself. You know,
take responsibility.
Don't expect your doctor or your naturopath or your nutritionist. You can get the info. You can get the info from this, but you have to figure it out for yourself. What works for you? Is it breath work? Is it meditation? Is it watching the sunrise, watching the sunset? Is it eating good foods? Is it growing foods? Like, there's so many options out there. But
just try them.
Just try them. Become addicted. You know, just become addicted to what you're doing, the good stuff, you know, and become addicted to those 2 glasses of water that you might drink in the morning that you've started as a habit. To get, you know, I call that break fast. You're breaking that fast that you haven't had anything to eat or drink since maybe 6 o'clock the night before. Get addicted to getting on your bike. This is my addiction, by the way. I'm just giving you my addiction. 2 glasses of water in the morning, and then usually everything wants to empty out, so that's good. So you've cleaned out, you've put in some clean water. Then the next step is I get on my bike, dark. It's always the same time, about 5 o'clock, depending on summer or winter. I have my togs in my bag, I have my breathing gear in my bag, and I meet a bunch of friends. And that's when we do coffee, by the way. We do have coffee in the morning. And then we go do breath work by 5:30. We swim at 6:30. I'm home by 7:30. Get dressed, go to work if that's what I'm doing, go to the farm if that's what I'm doing. And then my day is just filled with fun things, things that I want to do, things that I love doing, writing, researching, farming, whatever it is that I've got to do. Then I get home. My husband and I, we have a whiskey at 5, so we go out onto the deck, and we sit there, and he drinks wine, by the way, I drink whiskey. So we sit there and have our dinner. You know, one of us will have started dinner. We've gone into a little bit of a bad habit of watching a television show at the moment, which is on Netflix. But anyway, I said to him, we've got to stop this. But anyway, we do an hour of that every night.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. We just sit there and it's because we love Jackson Hole and we love Yellowstone. It's Yellowstone what we're watching.
I've heard it's good anyway. Yes.
Yeah. So we're watching that at the moment. So we'll sit down and do that for about an hour. We're in bed by 8:30. You know, both of us are ready for bed by 8:30.
It's a full day.
It's a full day. It
and a
is
full, beautiful,
full.
full of life day.
Yep.
It's living by your design on what you want to live, not how someone has told you should
live.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And I think, you know, we have to do this at our age. Don't be doing something you don't like.
No, start saying no to the things that you don't want to do and start saying yes to the things that really, that you want to do and that you haven't given yourself time to do.
Yeah, and find that tribe and you know, nurture your family and whatever it is that you need to do. It's like there's millions of things we can do. You've just got to pick the right things and not the things that are going to give you ill health. So you have a choice. Every morning you wake up, you have that choice. Every time you eat food, you have a choice of whether you're going to give yourself health or you're going to destroy it. You have the choices. And I know when people want to change their life, they'll either find the actions to change it or they'll find the excuses.
Yes.
So they'll find one or the other.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a lot of the latter. Well, what I see anyway. But wow, thank you so much,
Thank
Cyndi.
you. I've enjoyed this too.
Really, really, I've loved. Yeah, just this is kind of really can get into this couch.
Yeah, you can.
Listener, if you've enjoyed this podcast episode and any of our other podcast episodes, I'd love you to leave a 5-star review. I think Cyndi's definitely 5-star plus.
Thank you.
And yes, please share that with your friends. Share the link to this podcast and any other podcast episodes to your friends and family. And thank you again for tuning in. And I will come in again next week.